A very good evening to you and welcome to this special broadcast coming to you from Karen, where media houses are this evening having a conversation with the Azimio presidential candidate Raila Odinga and his running mate, Martha Karua. This is a special broadcast being brought to you by several media houses. My name is Eric Lati from KTN. I have my colleagues Francis Gashuri from Citizen. The conversation is also live on K24, and Alan Owino is here from K24. It's also live on KBC, represented by Nancy Okware, and it's also live on NTV. Melita Oletenges is here with us. This conversation is also being transmitted live on several radio stations across the country. Welcome for this conversation, and welcome, Your Excellency Raila and Martha.
Thank you.
We'll have an interesting conversation, starting from what you've been having, around the country in terms of your campaigns. You've been busy up and down. Let me just give you a rundown of what we want to focus on this evening. We want to focus on several conversations. One of them is the cost of living. We'll talk about corruption and the fight against corruption. We'll also have a conversation about your promises, some of the campaign promises that you're making around the country: social protection, health, education. We'll also talk about unemployment and what you have programmed for the youth. And then we'll talk about the current campaign politics and how you are managing that. And then we will talk about integrity and accountability. Right? That is a good enough topic, Martha?
Yes, it is.
And we can also say the way you've been saying that Raila ni mzalendo. And that this is the kind of campaign that you've been having, Haro going around the country and even meeting people who are making fun of you and engaging with them one-on-one.
The Haro is theirs, but we use hello a lot when the crowd is making noise.
Right.
Yeah, but everybody is entitled to enjoy whichever, whether by mimicking, whether by their memes, you're entitled to enjoy.
And then there are those who also mimic you, Baba, when you come onto the stage and the first thing he says, higher, higher, to get the crowd to attention. And you've stopped doing the kitendawili. Why?
I've not really stopped doing the kitendawili. I just don't do it as often as I used to do. But sometimes I use it when I want to bring a point home. Then I use kitendawili. It's not that I don't use it because some people have accused me of bana kitendawili. That is not really the reason. Yeah.
You just transitioned from now doing kitendawili to doing the dance.
Yes.
It's a new Raila.
Exactly.
Okay.
Sometimes you metamorphose.
Let's get into the conversation, Francis.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Odinga, Madam Karua. The very fundamental question on many people's minds tonight is the cost of living. You're seeking votes from people who are barely surviving. The cost of living, cost of unga, cost of fuel, and all the other costs are rising fundamentally. And in the very short run, in the interim, because you have President Uhuru Kenyatta's here and the government's here, what in the interim would be your proposal to reduce the cost of living and make life easier for many Kenyans? That is in the short run. But in the long run, what would be your promises? What would be your plan in the event you're elected president in August?
Well, because if you look at really the cost of it, I see some people who are really trying to divide attention of the public, playing populist politics with the cost of living. But the facts are that, one, I think you had like a crop failure. You did not harvest enough to be able to satisfy the demands, the needs of the country. Secondly, there have been other events which have taken place in other parts of the world, which themselves are major contributory factors to the rise in cost of living, not only in Kenya, but around the world. Even see the USA is fighting it. European countries right now are having serious problems because of what is happening in Ukraine there. So there are factors beyond the actual control of the government. But you can actually make some adjustments when you, for example, cut down on certain expenditures. and then focus on feeding the people, making it much more bearable for the local person in the country. And you're really talking about basically just essential commodities like the cost of unga, which everybody talks about, the price of sugar, or the price of cooking oil, and also petrol and so on. You can, by looking at the budget and making some adjustments in terms of expenditure, both recurrent and development, you can be able to make some adjustments. Okay.
Mheshimiwa Madha, swali hilo gharama ya maisha. Bila shaka unatafuta kura ama mnatafuta kura na Mheshimiwa Odinga, na watu wanakuambia kuhusu njaa, wanakuambia kuhusu gharama ya maisha na wanahitaji suluhisho. Kuna suluhisho la muda huu kwa sasa, ili wakienda kupiga kura mwezi wa 8 angalau swala hilo liwe limeshughulikiwa japo kwa kiasi kidogo?
Kwa sasa tuelewe, Azimio haiko kwa serikali. Jubilee ambayo iko kwa serikali ni chama moja baina ya vyama 26 za muungano wa Azimio. Lakini ni kweli iko uhusiano mzuri kati ya kinara wangu na rais aliyeko. Kwa hivyo wananchi waelewe, hatuwezi kama Azimio kuamua ni vipi. Lakini tukichukua mamlaka, na Mungu atusaidie na wananchi tuchukue, tumepeana ahadi ya kwamba kwa siku 100 za kwanza gharama ya maisha itateremshwa, na ziko njia kadhaa za kufanya hivyo, na kinara wangu ashaelezea. Na hii si mara ya kwanza gharama ya maisha imejaribiwa kuletwa chini na serikali. Wakati tulikuwa kwa serikali ya Rais Kibaki tukiwa na kinara wangu, serikali ilijaribu kuleta gharama ya maisha chini na kufanya kutafuta mbinu za kupatia wenye viwanda vya kusiaga unga mahindi kwa bei nafuu, ndivyo unga ishuke. Ziko njia kadhaa za kufanya hivyo, na tumepeana hiyo ahadi. Wa sasa ile tunaweza tu ni pengine kinara wangu kuongea na mwenzake, lakini mkumbuke hizi ni siku za mwisho na hatujui mipango ya ndani ya serikali.
Mheshimiwa Odinga, umejaribu kumweleza rais moja kwa moja kuhusu swala hili unapoenda maeneo mbalimbali kutafuta kura, ukamwambia labda watu wanasema hivi kuhusu gharama ya maisha, watu wanasema hivi kuhusu bei ya vyakula, na labda kama ana suluhisho la muda kabla, iwapo utakuwa unachaguliwa kama rais, uchukue usukani ama mwingine yote ambaye atakuwa anachaguliwa kuwa rais?
Sitaki kuongea kwa niaba ya serikali. Lakini mimi ningependa kusema ati ni kweli tumezungumzia mambo haya, na mimi najua labda hakuna changamoto zingine. Manake vile ninavyojua shida wako nayo ni kwamba serikali haitembei pamoja. Iko nusu ya serikali ambayo inapinga yale ambayo serikali inajaribu kufanya. Wao wanacheza siasa na maisha ya Wakenya. Ati wao wanasema wao ndio wanasuluhu, wakipewa hatamu ya uongozi katika nchi hii watateremsha gharama ya maisha chini. Sasa unauliza, wewe uko katika cabinet, baraza ya mawaziri, na hiyo baraza ya mawaziri ndio inatoa uamuzi yale ambayo nitakanya ifanyike. Baba hayuko katika cabinet. Naweza tu kutoa ushauri kwa rais mwenyewe, lakini yeye mwenyewe na wenzake ndio wako katika serikali. Kwa hivyo sisi tumeweza kutoa pendekezo, lakini saa zingine wanapata ugumu hapa na pale ambao mimi mwenyewe siwezi kuyaingia. Lakini sisi tunaweza kuongea juu yale tutafanya, na mimi naweza kuhakikishia Wakenya ati ahadi ambayo tumetoa sio mzaha, ni ahadi ambayo tunajua ni deni kwa Wakenya, Manake si mara ya kwanza sisi kuwa katika serikali. Tuliingia katika serikali wakati hali ya uchumi ilikuwa mbaya zaidi, na vile vile wakati ile yani mambo ya ufisadi ilikuwa juu zaidi. Tupoingia huko tena tulikuwa tumeahidi wa Kenya tutaleta somo la bure ya primary shule, na tulipoingia na imna hii tukaanza kutekeleza somo la bure, na vile vile tukatafuta mbinu ya kuleta kazi kwa vijana ambaye ilisaidia vijana kupata pesa kidogo kwa mfukoni mwao, kama ile kazi mtaani ambayo sasa inaitwa, na hiyo ilikuwa inafanywa katika pembe zote za taifa. Ikasaidia vijana kukuwa na pesa ambayo wanaweza kutumia kununua chakula, na vile vile tukaagiza mahindi kutoka ng'ambo, tukalipa sisi kama serikali, na tukalazimisha NCPB kuuza hizo mahindi kwa bei nafuu kwa mtambo za kusaga mahindi, ili bei ya unga irudi chini kwa wananchi, na ilifanyika mpaka hiyo iliendelea mpaka baadaye tulipokuwa na mavuno, chakula ikarudi sawasawa na gharama bei ya chakula ikarudi chini. Kwa hivyo kuna njia ya kufanya haya, na sisi tuna hakika tukiingia katika serikali ndani ya siku 100 ili tumeahidi, tutapunguza gharama ya maisha kwa Wakenya wote.
Allow me to wrap this up with one question. While you say you're not in government, and that could be the case, but your critics will say, since the handshake, you have some level of leverage, the assumption. Does that in any way give you some extra baggage in terms of looking for votes, well aware of some of the challenges that the government has experienced, especially in the second term? Does it in any way affect your search for votes?
You know, Kenyans are basically not stupid. My competitors are saying that the stupidity died in Kenya and was buried. Kenyans know very well that I'm not in government. I don't earn a salary in government. I don't live in government house. I don't get any allowance from government. But I can give some advice. And advice, as you know, is just what it is. I mean, it is not implementable. The receiver can use it or cannot use it. But having been in government, I also know the challenges which a government also faces. Like this crisis we are in right now, it's a serious crisis. You can see the way the cost of crude oil has gone up. You know, and when the cost of oil goes up, virtually everything else goes up in a country. We know that for a fact, because everything else depends on oil in terms of manufacturing. So it is unfair really to just do a blanket blame in government. Somebody who is earning a salary, has got over 250 security of government defending him, is using government vehicles and equipment to do the campaign. To come out and say he's not in government, it asks mtu wa kitendawili ndio anajua yeye ndio yako ndani ya serikali. Mimi nilitolewa kwa serikali. Kama ulitolewa kwa serikali, you do the decent thing that most responsible people do. You resign. That is what Mr. Bill Kagia did. That is what Jaramogi Oginga Odinga did. You resign and then you become an ordinary person. But you don't say you're out of government and you're blaming that same government, but you're earning the salary from the same government. If that is not hypocrisy, then I don't know what hypocrisy is.
I think if I may add just a little, you can't also choose which part of government you will claim credit for and which part you disown. If somebody is standing in the podium and telling people that I've influenced this to happen in government, they must also take the blame for any shortcoming of government. And that's the way it is.
We'll come back into the politics of the campaign and the back and forth and who bears what responsibility as we continue this conversation. There's something that you've touched on there, Mheshimiwa Raila, which is on social protection, protecting the vulnerable, and cash transfer program, like you implemented earlier. You have been promising 6,000 shillings in campaign rallies in the public. Now, there's a lot of misconception and misunderstanding of what this 6,000 shillings is all about. Who qualifies for 6,000 shillings? When do they start receiving 6,000 shillings? In fact, when you promote this interview this evening, somebody already sent us a message saying that we ask you for 2,000 shillings. Deposit. Alafu utakata ukiingia serikali. So who qualifies? What is this 6,000 shillings for? Who qualifies for it?
Let me say this. First, there are the facts and there are also jokes about it. The fact is that we are talking about a social protection program, and it's not being introduced in this country, only in the world. It is something that exists in other countries in the world, like in the UK, most European countries, United States, it's in Brazil. On the continent, it is in Egypt. It is also in Namibia. In fact, we have a Kenyan who helped to design the Namibian program, who is the one who has actually worked with our experts here. And what we're talking about is a number of Kenyans who live below the poverty line. These figures are taken from the Bureau of Statistics, and they have already been profiled. About 2,000 families. When you talk about 2,000 families, you're talking a family, say 4 people per family. Then you're talking about 8 million people. And these are people you're giving money. The family, not individuals. Mm-hmm. And so if it's 6,000 per family for 2 million people, that's 12 million shillings.
12 billion shillings.
12 billion shillings.
Is it per year, per month?
Per month. That works to 144 billion shillings per year. We have already costed it, okay? 144 billion shillings per year. We know, for example, the kind of pilferages and losses. The president one day talked about 2 billion shillings per day that is being lost to corruption. President Obama also put it at about 700 billion equivalent Kenyan shillings. So that is roughly what it is. And I know you ask how, but most of that money is being lost through procurement. Particularly through procurement and also through collections, because the budget basically consists of income and expenditure, government. You are under-collecting and then you are overspending. That is what it is. If you say about 700 billion shillings is being lost to corruption, if you basically try to block this, you can have a saving, say, of 500 billion shillings. We are talking of only 144 billion shillings. See, but we have also been in the government before. When we went into the government, we found a treasury which is almost empty. The coffers are almost empty. The growth was also negative. The revenue collection was very low, generally. But then we immediately realized the cause of it. The revenue officers, basically are the boys in town. They're the ones who are buying apartment blocks in town. They're the ones who are driving the latest model of cars. They're the ones who are constructing castles in the rural areas. They're the ones who are building high-rise buildings in village markets and so on. So if you do a lifestyle audit, you'll be able to just get rid of this. And what we did exactly that. We suspended them, we did a lifestyle audit, and we actually sacked some, retained those who were not very tainted, transferred them. The other side is the expenditure side of the budget. You have these so-called, they call them procurement officers. They're all seconded into ministries from the Treasury. They are the other group, like the revenue officers. Exactly the same thing. The procurement at that time was being done through these officers. There's a government requirement that any procurement above 100,000 shillings had to be done competitively. In other words, you had to advertise in at least 3 leading newspapers.
Yep.
And then there must be at least 3 bidders. And then you award to the lowest, as it were. What we discovered was that each and every one of these procurement officers had 3 companies registered. And so then there was a collusion that this officer is in health, he's supplying water. This one is in water, supplying agriculture. The one in agriculture is supplying roads and so on and so forth. There's a collusion. So anytime you advertise, you will get three bids. And all of those 3 bids are coming from one person. And then the cost is heavily inflated. Like they will be buying, say, a calendar at which should be costing 20 shillings, be buying it 100 shillings. An item which is supposed to be costing 50 shillings is bought at 1,000 shillings. And then that amount of money is shared between these people.
So
that's how revenue is being lost. I'm just trying to elaborate to you how this 2 billion shillings
gets lost.
Get lost in the government. It is not a fictitious figure. It is something that is realistic. And if you pay proper attention, you can actually save that money and use that money for the kind of program that we're talking about. This is just one of them.
So if we were to look at this 6,000 shillings, why 6,000? Why not 7? Why not 5? Why 6?
6 is because this will bring these people to what you call the minimum, basically level. Yeah, I mean more than $1, $3 per day, and they will be able to live like other people. And it is not just a waste. You see, it is an investment, because when you do this, the people, I mean, in the rural areas particularly, the purchasing power of these people go up. The shops in the rural areas can now do business. So the economy, the rural economy itself is stimulated through this amount of money. So it's like an economic stimulus program. It is not just a waste.
With a ripple effect.
Yes.
My final part on this particular question is currently the government has a program called the Inawezekana, which is a cash transfer program to the elderly, to persons with disability, severe disability, and to vulnerable and orphans. So is this a similar program? Are you going to scrap the Inawezekana program, or are you consolidating the Inawezekana program and just adding from 2,000 shillings to 6,000 shillings?
If you go into your records, you'll find that I'm the one who launched the Inawezekana program in Mombasa when I was Prime Minister. It was really our idea to help the elderly people and also the people with disabilities and so on. Those are people who are not able to really fend for themselves. And it was capped at 2,000 shillings. That is a separate program. These are the other group of people. Some of them, those other ones may also be included in this group. But this is over and above the Inawezekana program. This one here is targeting those specific families who have been profiled by the National Bureau of Statistics. Okay.
Okay. Well, former Premier, it's a good thing you've spoken about corruption, and I believe Honorable Martha, you can just speak up after him because this is a docket that directly translates to you. Now, corruption is a big thing, as the One Kenya Coalition has spoken about, and I believe it formed the premise upon which you added that extra docket of the Justice and Legal Affairs to the Deputy President when you were mentioning your shadow cabinet. Now, this would necessarily mean that the Deputy President is overseeing policies and issues pertaining to the Justice and Legal Affairs, but many would argue that in the long run it would have a ripple effect in affecting the independence of institutions such as the Office of the Public Prosecutor. We have the DCI, we have the ACC. So how then would you ensure as the executive that you do not compromise on the independence of these institutions that should be so?
Of course, she's going to talk to you about the details.
Yeah.
But let me just tell you that we have one government. And the government now consists of three arms. You've got the executive, you've got the judiciary, and you've got the legislature. All these three arms are interdependent. If one is not working properly, efficiently, it actually affects the other arm of the government. See, so it is necessary, therefore, for these three arms of government, in spite of the independence, to also see the interdependence of them, because they are all providing services. The executive cannot perform its work if the judiciary is not working. You see, if the judiciary is not working, it actually affects the executive. See, when you are talking about the criminals, and if these criminals are arrested, and then they are taken to court, and then they are released, of course they become a drag on society. You've got, how many cases have we had? A criminal who was killed or who was threatened to kill. I think it just happened last week. He's taken to court, is being given bail, he comes out and goes and kills his mother. See, so something is wrong somewhere, which must be addressed. The same thing with the legislature. If Parliament is the one that passes the laws, the executive implements the laws which Parliament has passed. They use those laws to govern the country. Then the judiciary interprets the laws and to see that the laws are being implemented, they're not being violated. But if the legislature makes wrong laws, then the executive also work is affected. So there must always be a kind of cooperation. I think people are pushing this word so-called independence too far, as if they are in different countries. That you've got, like, for example, independent, you've got these commissions that we set up in the Constitution, that each one of them is now dependent on its own. You cannot interfere with what they're doing. They are protected by the Constitution, even if they're not doing their work, or even they're doing it wrongly, that there's nothing you can do about it. I don't think that is what is intended in the Constitution. You see, there's independence and there's also interdependence, generally. So, like when you talk about the criminal justice system, you've got the investigative arms of government. Then you've got the procedural arm of government, the DPP. Then you've got the judiciary. You see? So sometimes you find the police themselves collude to shield criminals. But sometimes the police have done their work. The DCI has done its work and has gotten sufficient evidence? The DPP refuses or says this evidence is not sufficient. And it's discretionary on him. It refuses to prosecute. Or when it agrees to prosecute, takes to court, then the courts themselves are compromised. And you know that courts sometimes are compromised. So a court that is compromised, in my view, is worse than the criminals, because it protects the criminals. Okay? But then, this is a conversation I've had when I was a prime minister before, with the then Chief Justice, when we were having those problems. But that was, of course, the situation prior to the new constitution. Okay? So my view is that, yes, independence is there, but there's also interdependence of these arms of government, because ultimately you want the delivery of services to the people to be done efficiently.
Okay. Well, Honorable Martha, I'm sure there's a lot of uncertainty to this role because you'll be the deputy president and there's also this additional role. And according to Article 147(4) of the Constitution, you cannot hold two offices. So maybe if you just respond to the same and clarify what this would mean as a member of the executive overseeing certain arms of the judicial aspect.
I think that's a misconception.
Okay.
If you look at the description of what a deputy president does, is be the principal assistant of the president and perform any other duties assigned by the president. So any other duties is covered. You can hold a ministerial docket. And there's no difference when a deputy president holds a ministerial docket and when any other minister holds. So the framing of the question, as though having a deputy president hold the office of Justice and Constitutional Affairs Ministry is an oppressive thing, is wrong, is misleading. It is a ministerial portfolio like any other. And for people to understand the three arms of government, it's like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. The three of them fall into place and make the whole. So they are independent but interdependent. And the Justice Ministry is a coordinating ministry. It doesn't prosecute. It doesn't arrest. It doesn't decide on the cases. So it's a more policy and coordination, so that when arms of government get together and you want to find where things are not moving, and whether we are moving according to the policy direction, and to support each other in execution, not in decision-making. When the government proposes to Parliament a bill, it doesn't sit in Parliament to pass that bill, but it's a government proposal. When the government, sitting with the judicial arm, asks for speedy movement of cases, it doesn't go in to determine those cases or to hear the evidence. It's talking about policy direction. So that, for instance, if we need any law to limit how long certain cases can sit, then it's agreed together in a consultation. Proposals are made by the relevant department and placed forward. So there's no contradiction whatsoever. The Azimio government will be a government that upholds the rule of law and constitutionalism, and will strictly do things in accordance with the law. So I'd like people to know that it is not a contradiction for a deputy president to have additional responsibilities assigned by the president. Okay. And that's precisely what we are talking about. And fighting corruption, if I may add, is more than just about going to court. It involves giving the public confidence that the government is serious about what it is doing, so that the public can be partners in the fight against corruption. And if we wind backwards and go to 203, basically when the NAC government came in, the public was so inspired by the zeal and the commitment of the NAC government that members of the public could actually stop policemen from receiving bribes on the roads. Members of public chose to walk to force the matatu industry to accept the Michuki rules. Members of public recovered the Kenyatta International Conference Center from those occupying it and claiming ownership and handed it back to the relevant ministry. This is the kind of thing we are looking for, that we will demonstrate our commitment to fighting corruption and make the public our partners in this fight. And that goes beyond just applying the law, and also working seamlessly with those in the criminal justice sector, the courts, the legislature, where we need to tighten the laws, etc.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Even as we continue with certain aspects of the manifesto that you gave out as a coalition, a big and integral part of this year's election is pegged around the women factor.
Yeah.
And when we talk about the women factor, we talk about the 2/3 gender role representation, especially in the bicameral house. Now, your competitors, from the suggestions that they've been given, many have argued there's a lot of practicality, for lack of a better word. They've spoken about giving half of the government to the women. They've signed charters. They've also spoken about putting up a kitty for the women. And they've added to that and said that they're going to achieve the 2/3 gender rule within the first 100 days in office. On your side, what is the assurance that you're giving women, despite you being potentially being the first female deputy president? What assurance are you giving people to say that, you know what, moving forward, we're going to have better representation of women in our government?
It's easier said than done. For us, the commitment is demonstrated. Right now, Azimio is not saying that we will do for women A, B, C, D. My principal, seated right here next to me, appointed me his deputy. That's a demonstration of the commitment. So when we say that we will fulfill, we will continue the implementation of the Constitution, which includes the 2/3 gender rule, we have demonstrated it. When my principal says that he actually believes in 50-50, he has not just the 2/3 gender rule, but 50-50. He has already demonstrated it. So for the competition to claim that they have the commitment, where have they demonstrated it? And we have gone beyond that. If you look backwards, and I always tell this story, that when we came from Beijing in 1995, those of us who were in parliament then were bringing in motions for the implementation of the commitments in Beijing. And I remember my sister, the Honorable Charity Ngilu, Governor of Kitui, and Senator Beth Mogo bringing such motions. On my part, I proposed the Equality Act and the Domestic Violence Bill, which was later to be adopted by the government. But only one man joined us and brought a motion to set up the Gender Equality Commission. That man was none other than the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. So that is just to show that the commitment of Azimio to women's issues runs deep. It's not just about this election. It's something that we practice. And if you look even in Parliament, a majority of the elected women will be from his party. And even now, those running, there is quite a good number. So I'm saying our commitment is demonstrated. I don't want to talk about my part because I think that it goes beyond saying.
Okay.
So we will not only implement the 2/3 gender rule, which is the starting point, but we will go beyond it, and that commitment has already been shown.
All right.
After that question on, fighting corruption and the position of women from Alan Owino of K24, my colleague, Melita Oletenges from from NTV, has a question on youth and the position of youth.
Thank you very much. Ningependa kuuliza swali langu kwa lugha ya Kiswahili. nafasi za ajira ni jambo ambalo mmeahidi kwa pamoja, na ni shina muhimu sana katika uchaguzi ujao, ikizingatiwa kuwa gharama ya maisha imeenda juu. Lakini tukizingatia kwamba serikali ya Jubilee ilikuwa imeahidi nafasi za kazi milioni 1 kila mwaka kwa awamu yao ya pili, je, nafasi yenu ya uwazi kabisa au mbinu ambayo mtalenga kutumia kuhakikisha kuwa mnaongeza nafasi za ajira nchini hususan kwa vijana, na pia mbinu ipi mtakuwa mnatumia ili kuhakikisha kuwa watu wamepata ajira humu nchini?
Ndio, sisi tayari tumesema katika manifesto wetu ya kwamba kwanza tunaongea kwa jumla juu ya uchumi, na tumesema tunataka kupanua uchumi wetu. Kwa mfano, tumeongea juu ya mambo ya viwanda, na tumesema tunataka kuona kama kila county iko na viwanda, kwa sababu tunaongea juu ya county moja, product moja, one county one product. Na hii ni mambo ambayo sisi tunataka kuanzisha kwa njia ya haraka. Maana yake tayari utafiti imefanyika, tunajua ni nini inapatikana katika eneo hii na eneo hii na kadhalika. Lakini haya yote sisi tunategemea Wakenya. Wakenya ndio tunategemea kabisa. Kwa upande mwingine, kama serikali tunajua wakati huu vijana wetu wengi sana wako na shida mingi zaidi, na tunataka kuanza kuleta ile ajira ambayo inaweza kuajiri vijana wengi zaidi. Kwa mfano, kazi mtaani, tunasema tutarudisha kazi mtaani mara moja kama tunaanza yani tukuna kwa mambo short term, as immediate, mid term and long term. Vijana wetu wengi vile vile wana ujuzi, wamesoma. Kwa mfano, kwa upande ya ICT wako na ujuzi wengi zaidi, na tuko na changamoto kwa sababu ya kutokuwa na ile connectivity ya kutosha, haswa katika eneo za mashambani huko. Tunataka kusambaza ICT ifike kwenye vijiji wetu, ili vijana wanaweza connect na wanaweza hata kupata ajira kwa kampuni ambazo ziko nje ya taifa letu, wanaweza kufanya kazi hizo huko. Vile vile tumesema tutaanza hazina mpya ya mkopo, pale ambapo vijana wanaweza kwenda kukopesha pesa ya kuanzisha biashara yao, na walipi riba yoyote mpaka baada ya miaka 7. Haya yote ni vitu ambayo tayari zimeangaliwa na wataalamu wetu, na najua inawezekana kufanyika. Tukileta mambo kama haya, vijana wengi kwanza wataweza kunufaika kwa hiyo mpango. Lakini muhimu zaidi ni mafunzo. Tunataka toa mafunzo kwa vijana wetu. Ndio sasa tunataka kupanua motivates ziwe katika kila sub-county, ambayo vijana wanaweza kwenda pale na kupata mafunzo ya aina tofauti, ili waweze kwenda kuanzisha biashara yao. Yani, watu wengi katika taifa letu wanaangalia serikali. Wengi ukienda mahali wanasema kabila yetu au koo yetu hawajaajiriwa katika serikali. Hawajaajiriwa katika serikali kila mahali mikienda. Lakini serikali inaweza tu kuajiri watu kadhaa. Kwa mfano, wakati huu ukichukua serikali ya kitaifa, yani wale ambao wanaitwa civil servants, na atuweke polisi ndani yake na jeshi na kadhalika, alafu weke hata wale ambao wameajiriwa katika macounties, idadi inakuja na kuwa 700,000 peke yake, 700,000. Na hizo nafasi haziko wazi, watu wameajiriwa tayari katika hizo nafasi. nafasi inatokea kama mtu anakufa au anastaafu, na hiyo ni 10% peke yake. Kwa mfano inakuwa 70,000 kila mwaka ndio tunapatikana kama vacancies, lakini kila mwaka sisi kama taifa tunamwaga katika soko la kutafuta kazi watu karibu 1,000,000, wale ambao wanawacha shule kwa darasa la 8, kwa darasa la 12, wengine wanatoka kwa ile vituo vingine na chuo kikuu, karibu watu 1,000,000. Kwa hivyo mpaka tuangalie sekta ya kibinafsi, private sector, ndio itaweza kutoa ajira kwa wale vijana wetu wote. Sisi tunataka kuona kama Wakenya wenyewe wanapewa fursa ya kuwa kama investors. Wakenya ambao wako hapa na wale ambao wako nje. Juzi sisi tumekuwa na conference na diaspora wa Kenya, tukiwahimiza ya kwamba tutafungua Kenya ili wao wanaweza kuleta pesa zao na kuinvest hapa Kenya. Kuna vile vile wageni, ile kitu ambayo inaitwa FDI, Foreign Direct Investments, kwa wanataka kuleta mali zao hapa, kuanzisha biashara hapa na kutumia Kenya kama mahali ya kutengeneza bidhaa na kuuza katika soko hii ya kanda ya Afrika Mashariki. Kuna wafadhili wengi sana wanataka kukuja hapa Kenya. Wengine ambao wanataka kutoka China, kutoka nchi zingine waje hapa katika bara ya Afrika. Sasa shida ambayo iko hapa ni mazingira ya wale kuleta mali yao hapa. Juzi mimi nilikuwa na wale mabalozi na wafanyi biashara kutoka Ulaya. Wanasema makampuni yao kubwa kubwa wangependa sana kuja hapa, lakini mazingira hapa ya kuweka mali yao hapa ni sio sawa, kwa sababu unakuja hapa kwanza ili kitu inaitwa bureaucracy, pili corruption iko juu sana. Alafu sasa wengine mtu anakuja hapa ameshasema yeye anataka kuanzisha kiwanda, amenunua shamba, kisha mtu mwingine anaenda mahakamani nasema hiyo shamba ni yangu, maana yake tuko na title deeds mabandia. Alafu yeye anakwenda anapata injunction kwa court, jamaa hawezi kuendelea na kazi yake, court hii imefunga hii maneno, na hiyo kesi haisikizwi miaka 3, kesi haijamuliwa. Juzi nilikutana na Amerika, yeye amekuwa hapa sasa kwa miaka 3, anakuja kesi imehairishwa, ati yule jamaa ambaye alienda mahakamani hayuko, wakili hajakuja, mahakama ameharisha kwa miezi 6. Ananiuliza mimi, Raila, hawa jamaa, do they know I'm coming from the LA? Do they know where LA is in this world? I'm not going to come again here. You see, this guy has been wanting to invest in the country, but he cannot, because somebody who is holding a wrong title deed has gone to court and has gotten an injunction, and the matter is not being heard. So if you say the judiciary is letting us down, creating a very unfriendly environment for investors, we know what you're talking about. Lakini sisi tunataka tukiingia ndani tufungue, manake hii italeta ajira mingi kwetu. Tumesema tunataka kujenga special economic zone ile ya Dongo Kundu ili kufanya kazi, ingine tujenge Lamu, ingine tujenge huko Kisumu, tayari ingine nataka kuweka hapo Voi, okay? Na iko industrial parks ambao sisi tutaweka ni kama Nyeri, tutaweka industrial park huko, Leo kama Embu tunafanya namna hiyo, Garissa na kadhalika. Tunaweza kuleta vitu ambavyo vitatoa ajira nzuri kwa vijana wetu. Kwa sisi tuko na mpango mingi sana kwa vijana na kwa kina mama, na tuna hakika ya kwamba inawezekana.
Mheshimiwa Martha, kwa kifupi tu, Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga amegusia kwamba kila mwaka tunao wasomi ambao wanafuzu 1,000,000, lakini je, mrengo wa Azimio pengine unalenga kuwa na nafasi ngapi za kazi kila mwaka?
Nafasi za kazi tunaweza peana figures na ziwe juu au chini, lakini vile kinara wangu amesema, ukiangalia sekta ya SME wa sasa ina zaidi ya watu 2,000,000 wakipatiwa mazingira sawasawa ya biashara, sababu hata wao wanafinywa na ufisadi. Ukienda kuuliza license, ukienda kufanya nini, unaona hata mtu wa welding anaulizwa certificate ya health. Saa zingine hizo vikwazo zote zinaletwa na ufisadi, zikiondolewa kazi zitapatikana nyingi. Na kazi si za wekezaji wa kutoka nje peke yake, ni mazingira ya kila Mkenya, na ndivyo tuweze kuwa na kazi za kutosha kwa vijana wetu. Na lazima tujaribu, kama wale wanakuja kwa market ya kutafuta kazi ni zaidi ya 1,000,000, lazima tujaribu tuone zile kazi zinapatikana, zinalingana au zinaongezeka. Na hii haiwezi fanyika mara moja, inafanyika kwa taratibu zile tutaweka, na tuko tayari kufanya hiyo yote.
Kabla hiyo kwa MSMEs, yani jua kali, sisi tayari tumesema ati sio tu kuwatambua, lakini kuwasaidia wao ili waweze kupata mkopo kwa gharama ya chini. Na vilevile tumesema tutaleta ile kitu inaitwa shahada ya jitihada, recognition of prior learning, RPL. Yani wengine wao hawakuenda kwa shule mpaka wakapata shahada ya shule, lakini wameenda wakajifundisha kazi na wana ujuzi zaidi. Mwingine anajua kuchoma vyuma, yani welder, mwingine ni mechanic, mwingine ni electrician, mwingine ni plumber, mwingine ni mason, mwingine ni carpenter, mwingine anajua kuezeka paa ya nyumba na vigae na kadhalika. Lakini sasa wakati huu hawezi kupata kandarasi ya serikali kwa sababu hawakuna ile certificate. Sisi tuwapatia hiyo certificate, ndio tunasema shahada ya jitihada, na wakiwa na hiyo wanaweza kupata kandarasi ya serikali bila kupitia kwa mabwanyenye ambayo wananyonyesha jasho lao.
Nampisha mwanahabari mwenza Nancy Okware kutoka idhaa ya taifa KBC.
Naam, shukrani. Bwana Raila, tukirejea kwako, ningependa kidogo tuzungumze kuhusiana na swala la afya. Manake tunafahamu ya kwamba uchumi wa taifa hauwezi ukaimarika bila afya bora. Na tumeshuhudia humu nchini wakati ambapo taifa na ulimwengu wanakumbana na janga la COVID-19, na kama Azimio la Umoja mmezungumza kuhusiana na baba care. Ikiwa mtazamaji anajiuliza pale nyumbani, hii baba care kwanza inahusu nini? Tofauti yake na UHC ni ipi? Na kama Azimio la Umoja mtatumia mbinu zipi kutafuta ama kupata zile fedha za kutekeleza?
Sisi tumesema kwanza sisi tunataka kuboresha hali ya matibabu katika taifa letu kwa kupanua vituo vya matibabu na vile vile kuimarisha. Tunasema tunataka level 4 katika kila sub county ili zisiwe mbali sana na pale watu wanakoishi. Kuna Wakenya wengi wanapata shida mingi zaidi, wamama haswa ambaye wajawazito, wengine wanakufa wako njiani wanapelekwa kwa vituo vya matibabu. Kwa sababu tunasema tunataka iwe karibu. Pili, tunataka kuna vituo zingine ziko pale lakini hakuna dawa ndani yake, hakuna vifaa ya matibabu, hakuna manases au daktari. Tunahakikisha na kwamba kila kituo cha matibabu imewekwa vizuri, imewekwa vifaa vya kutibu watu, kuna dawa ndani yake, kuna manases na daktari. Pili, tumeongea juu ya bima ya matibabu. Manake wale walileta kufanya tu kama experiment. Waliweka Kisumu, Machakos, Nyeri na wapi? Kitui ndio.
Kitui.
Sisi tutaweka, itakuwa kwa counties zote za Kenya, na Wakenya wote watakuwa chini ya bima sawasawa ya matibabu, sio tu ya kufanya majaribio. Watoto, wakina mama, wazee, vijana, na tuta vile njia ya kuwasaidia kulipa ile premium wale ambaye hawezi kulipa, ili kila mtu awe na cover. Akiwa mgonjwa anaweza kwenda kwa matibabu, na kama hata na pesa apate matibabu sawa sawa. Vile tutajaribu sana kuweka rasilimali katika zile vituo vya matibabu ya hali ya juu. Wakati huu Wakenya wengi wanaenda ng'ambo, sana India, wengine wanaenda Uingereza, wanaenda Afrika Kusini na kadhalika. Lakini zile vituo tunaweza weka hapa kwetu. Manake sisi tuko na wataalamu wengi Wakenya hapa ambao wamesoma vizuri kabisa, wanajua mambo ya matibabu. Yale ambayo inakosekana ni vituo. Na pili, vile mahospitali za kibinafsi, gharama iko juu sana. Wengi wa Kenya hawezi kumudu. Gharama ya kitanda katika hospitali hizi hapa Nairobi iko juu zaidi kuliko gharama ya kitanda katika 5-star hoteli. Ulala tu kule hujatibiwa, gharama ambao wanakulipiza inashinda Hilton au Serena. Hiyo ni kunyonya wa Kenya. Watu wengi hawezi. Mtu amekaa kwa hospitali kwa siku chache, gharama imefika milioni. Siku unakuta wa Kenya wanakutana jioni Pan African Hotel, Nairobi Club, jiwapi, kwenda kusanya pesa ya matibabu. Watu wanafanya tu kazi kwa hizi vituo vya matibabu katika taifa letu, wananyonyesha wa Kenya. Sisi tunataka kuleta uhuru kwa Wakenya, kwa kuleta vituo vya kiserikali kwa hali ya juu, ili Wakenya wako na chaguo. Kama unataka kwenda Aga Khan au Nairobi au wapi, unaweza kwenda mahali na utapata madaktari ambayo utatibiwa kwa ile gharama ambayo wewe unaweza kumudu. Hiyo ndio tunataka kufanya.
Naam. Yeah. Pengine Martha, tukipata kauli yako kuhusiana na hili swala la afya, manake ni wengi ambao wanaathirika, unapata kina mama, watoto. Unahisi kama taifa ni kipi kilichofanyika tukajipata pale ya kwamba unalipa fedha nyingi baada ya kusalia hospitalini kwa muda mfupi, kisha dawa hazipatikani, unapata ya kwamba unaambiwa baada ya kutibiwa nenda pale nje kanunue dawa?
Ufisadi umechangia pakubwa. Dawa zinapelekwa hospitali ya serikali, mahospitali ya county, unakuta hata zikiwa zimeletwa juzi hakuna dawa. Lakini daktari atakwambia ile chemist utaenda kununua. Sasa tunashindwa. Anajuaje ile chemist iko na dawa? Na si daktari mmoja, kutakuwa na mtindo, hiyo hospitali utakuwa unaelezewa ni wapi unaenda. Kwa hivyo ufisadi unachangia pakubwa, na ndio tunasema kwa serikali ya Azimio tutapambana na ufisadi vilivyo, sababu kila mahali, kila sekta, kila huduma imeathiriwa pakubwa na ufisadi. Ningependa Wakenya wajue wakati tulikuwa tukiwa wadogo na hata nikiwa mpaka university, hospitali zile zilikuwa nzuri zaidi hapa nchini ni za serikali, na watu wakigonjeka walikuwa tu wanaenda dispensary, wanaenda hospitali kuu. Nikija hapa kusoma kwa chuo kikuu cha Nairobi, City Council dispensary zilikuwa, ulikuwa unajua ni ipi inafungua 24 hours. Zilikuwa wazi, zilikuwa na dawa, zilikuwa na kila kitu. Wachache sana walikuwa wanaenda hospitali ya kibinafsi. Tukiboresha katika baba care, mahospitali ya serikali, hiyo ndio italeta bei ya hospitali za kibinafsi chini, sababu watu watakuwa vile kinara wangu amesema, itakuwa hapo wazi. Unaweza ingia hospitali ya serikali upate matibabu poa, unaweza enda ya private, na kama unaenda ya serikali bila malipo, watu wataopt kwenda ya serikali bila malipo. Lakini iko mambo mingi tutachangia kuboresha, kuona wako na vifaa vya kutosha vya kukagua ni matibabu gani, na pia ya kufanya treatment. Ndivyo kama ni hiyo matibabu ya kansa inafanya watu sana sana waende India, hiyo ni mambo inaweza fanyiwa hapa. Na zote tukiwa na lengo la kuboresha nchi yetu, na serikali ya Azimio ikiwa ina mwongozo wa aina hiyo, mambo ya matibabu, tutaokoa Wakenya wasiuze mali yao yote, wawachwe bila chakula, wawachwe bila mali ya mambo ingine muhimu, wauziwe shamba yao sababu wamechukua mkopo, na tuache kama nchi kupeleka pesa zote zetu ng'ambo. Hizo pesa ziboreshe serikali zetu.
Naam, Latif.
Well, we're having a conversation with the Azimio presidential candidate Raila Odinga and his running mate Martha Karua. We're coming to you live from Karen. This is a joint broadcast between several media houses, KTN, Citizen TV, NTV, KBC, K24, and several radio stations. We'll have a few minutes to conclude this conversation. So we're going to have some 3 questions. One of them is around the preparation for the August 9th general election and the confidence around it. The other one is on management of public debt. And of course, we have to talk about accountability to the public. So I'll start with my colleague Alan Owino of K24.
Okay, well, when you look at the issues surrounding the preparations for elections, this is majorly handled by the commission, which is IBC. And if we remember back in 2017, former Prime Minister, you were in a very precarious situation, especially with your party, and that particular election was nullified. But fast forward to 2022, the very same referee who was actually reffing that particular match is still at the very helm of that particular commission going to conduct this year's election. So my question is, what have you done within the 5-year period to see to it that you have enough confidence for him to ref this very same match this year?
Well, I have expressed sometimes my misgivings before, and I've said that I want to be convinced that preparations have been done that are above board to ensure a free and fair electoral process. I did, on the day we were presenting our papers to the Commission, I present them with a letter with 10 questions which I wanted them to answer. They have partly answered those questions, but there are some other concerns which have not been satisfactorily dealt with. But I would say that this is premature today because we are having a meeting tomorrow with the IBC, and I will be raising some of these questions there tomorrow. And that's when I will be satisfied or dissatisfied, satisfied that they are really prepared and ready for an election which is free and fair or not. So I would actually withhold my a further comment on this issue. Because
I would like to make an addition without going into matters that will be discussed tomorrow. And this is directly to fellow Kenyans, that we each have a responsibility to make the election free and fair and also credible. The polling clerk, the presiding officer, the returning officer, and everybody involved in the electoral process, including candidates, supporters, security agencies. We all have a role to play. If each one of us stood up for our country, Kenya, then we would not have complaints in elections. Chebukati and its team sitting at anniversary towers, if everybody else did their work, they would not, even if they wanted, be able to interfere or cause any malpractice. So this is a responsibility we must take jointly. And I want to say that I personally sought to prosecute privately 3 electoral officials arising from the malpractices in Kirinyaga in 2017. Although the court did not allow the private prosecution, and one party official, if I may add, I had gone to court against 4. An appeal is pending. Whether I'll prosecute it or not is another issue. But this is to say to everybody, don't hide behind an institution when you do wrong, because it's like declaring war against Kenya. Kenyans can come for you. Our constitution does allow it. So let us all do our best, even as we put Chebukati and his team to task tomorrow.
Indeed.
Is there a particular template, Honorable Odinga, that you have for what constitutes a credible election? Is there a template? What are your immediate concerns? I've seen issues raised on the complementary voter register at the polling stations. Are there what you would say irreducible minimums as you go to this election in terms of how IEBC manages it?
well, you know, there are a lot of factors that are contributory to a free and fair electoral process. The preparations towards it, first, recruitment of the staff who are going to conduct the elections themselves. Has it been done in a transparent manner, in a manner that does not favor anybody, and so on? Secondly, the procurement of the equipment that are going to be used in the election process. Here you have got, right now, the electronic or the ICT equipment. How was it procured? And how is it prepared? And who was involved? And how has it been tested that is going to work and is not going to fail? Then the printing of ballot papers. Who is printing these ballot papers? How was the contract itself procured? Where is the guarantee that this printer has not printed some extra ballot papers which can be used to do stuffing, as you know, what has happened in the past? Okay? Then the issue of polling stations. Where are they, and how are they connected in terms, you know, the cover of 3G or 4G in the country? Which are the stations which are not covered, and what measures have I been taken to ensure that result from those other ones are actually also made in time? And then the actual polling itself, what arrangements? Like you've got that backup you're talking about, which has become contentious. The IBC is insisting that you don't need a manual register. And people are saying that there's no harm in having a manual register as a counter check, so that when somebody comes and is identified electronically, you also delete his name on the register. That gives you the number. Eventually you can promote the numbers which you have crossed. know how many people have gone through that polling station. So that eventually, when wrong results come out, if 100 people voted, but then eventually 200 are announced, you can counter-check from that register to confirm that indeed the number which has come out is the number which voted here. They're saying they don't want to see that. The harm that causes to them, nobody knows. That is their own issue. Mm-hmm. So basically, the overall preparation of the election in that manner, and then the security, where who is going to provide security so that voters don't get harassed by some other goons, because the other opponents can hire goons to block opponents from going to vote. Mm-hmm. Those who are going to be in charge of security neutral enough to ensure that everybody is facilitated to cast his or her vote without coercion or interference. Okay? Then counting and that's on the polling day. Because what we have had is, not that we have not had agents in some areas. There are some areas where the agents are actually given two options: to agree to cooperate and take the money and disappear, or beaten up and thrown out, so that you don't have an agent there. See? Where is the guarantee that this is not? Because the police are also complicit there. And that's why you usually have these complaints. And then you have, the electronic system, where, you are identified through your biometrics and the irises, and then you are allowed to go and vote. Eventually, the results are counted, recorded, and then the presiding officer is supposed to, once the agents have signed, press the button and transmit, and it goes through a server in the cloud. In that particular case in 2017, it was going through a server which was in Spain or in France. Mm-hmm. And then from there it was coming to the server at Bomas. But then there is a logarithm that they put in, which was capturing the result before they entered the server at Bomas. So we had situations where our agents in the stations are giving us different results from the results that are being announced. Then you had two parallel lines running like this: 54, 44. 54, 44. I lost with 44. 54. My governor in Nairobi. 54, 44. In Kajiado. 54, 44. In Garissa. 54, 44. In all over where they lost. That was what it was.
Mheshimiwa, as we conclude the conversation, your competition has actually challenged you many times publicly. William Ruto saying, should he lose this election, he's prepared to concede defeat. Are you prepared to make the same commitment to the country?
Definitely. Definitely. I'm the sportsman between me and him. And I know that asiyokubali kushindwa sio mshindani. So I would easily accept defeat and congratulate the winner. Definitely.
Asante sana.
Maybe as we depart, the Raila Karua ticket, How is it going so far? You've not always worked in the same team together. In 2007, you're in different teams. In fact, my Honorable Mother, you're on record saying at one point you didn't see anything ideological that you shared with the Honorable Raila. Is it now a union of convenience for this election? What does your ticket now bring to the fore? And tied to that, what are your chances? Have you figured out what are your chances for winning this election?
I think I should go first, yes, now please, that you mentioned me. Mm-hmm. Remember, we were competitors in 2013. And if you are competitors, you go for it and you go for your competition. That is the only time we strictly were not on the same side. We've come from the same background, from the trenches fighting for expanded democracy. That doesn't mean when you are on the same side, you must see everything 100% the same way. In 2005, we were on opposing sides of the constitutional, the banana orange. Yeah. And 2007, we were again not together. But we came together in the National Accord, worked well. 2013, every person for themselves, and God for us all because we were both candidates. Shortly after that, 2014, we worked together. Now Kenya was friend of God. So we've worked together more than we've worked separately. We both come from a social justice background. We both root for social justice. In fact, the manifesto, because I found it in the making when I was named, I would have easily said it was made for NARC Kenya. We have more in common than separates us. And this is not just for convenience, it is for the sake of Kenya. We are in a very dangerous place where we can lose all that we have built. What we need in Kenya today is good leadership that can take the nation forward. I joined my principle to do just that, rescue our nation.
I just want to compliment what you just said.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But, from the days of Ford, yeah, we were together. See, Mother only left Ford at the time of nominations. Mm-hmm. Because of male chauvinism, which we need in nominations when in our constituency. Details are record there. But then we came and team together in Parliament. She came through DP, which was in the position together with Ford Asili and Ford Kenya. And we worked very closely together throughout that period. In 2002, we were together in NARC. We were together in NARC, and we campaigned together throughout that period of time. And then we went to government together, and we were ministers in the same government. We worked very closely in the cabinet. It was only the constitution bombers where we had differences. And then 2007, but then after that, we again worked in the same NARC government. So we have worked together more than we have worked apart. And as she says rightly, politics, sometimes you disagree in interpretation on issues. That does not make you enemies. So long as you have the same beliefs. You believe in human rights issues, believe in multipartyism, believe in democracy, liberal society that gives opportunity to its people and so on. So we share much more in common with Mother than many people have worked with.
Mara kwa mara umekanusha kwamba wewe si mradi wa Rais Uhuru Kenyatta. Pengine Rais Uhuru Kenyatta atakuwa na mchango upi ndani ya serikali yako?
Rais Uhuru Kenyatta anamaliza tamu yake. Yeye mwenyewe amesema anamaliza, anataka kwenda kupumzika. Na mimi tumeongea na yeye, nimesema yeye amechangia, amefanya kazi yake. Umekuwa na changamoto kwa serikali yake, mnajua. Lakini nafikiri amejaribu vile angeweza kufanya. manake vile waliingia katika serikali, katika hali walikuwa washtakiwa kule ICC. Hiyo ilikuwa ni changamoto kubwa sana, lakini tofauti na hayo walijaribu. Tukaja sasa kwa ya pili, tumeketi na yeye mwenyewe alikiri ya kwamba kulikuwa na makosa hapa na pale, lakini tusahau yaliyopita, tufanye kazi pamoja. Na nafikiri yeye amejaribu, ingawaje yeye amekuwa ana pingamizi kubwa katika serikali yake. Manake vile navyojua ile serikali ilikuwa ni nusu mkati. Kama upande mmoja ndio anafanya kazi, nyingine haifanyi kazi, inakimbia tu kufanya kampeni na propaganda kwa miaka 4. Hiyo ni kubwa sana kwa serikali. Mimi najua tulikuwa na tofauti zetu, mimi na Kibaki, lakini tulikuwa tunajua vile tunasuluhisha yale tofauti yetu. Kama sangine kwa mfano hatukubaliana vile alikuwa ameajiri Chief Justice na nini, na mimi nikaandikia barua nikasema mimi sijakuwa consulted. Hapo ndio sisi tulikuwa na tofauti, lakini baadaye tukasuluhisha. Na kile tulikuwa tunafanya kazi, naenda kwa cabinet, kama kuna shida tunaenda kwa cabinet pale, tunaongea na yeye na tunasema hapa naona si mzuri, au mimi mwenyewe nakwenda kwa State House. Kibaki hajanizuia mimi kuingia kwa State House, na kama kuna maneno mimi naenda kwa referee. I used to go to brief him ahead of any cabinet meeting. There's always a session between the Prime Minister and the President, and we tell him these are the memos we are bringing today to the meeting. They contain this and that and that. They have all been discussed exhaustively at the committee level. They have been approved. So we just bring them here for record and approval. And sure, we go and take those things there, and they are passed very quickly. So we worked very well with Kibaki. That cabinet, bloated as it is, was the most efficient cabinet Kenya has ever had. And we did a lot of things at that time. The Grand Coalition government. Everything that is being achieved by this government has its foundation in the Grand Coalition government. We laid the foundation for infrastructure development, for agricultural development, for water around the country. Remember, we had even a ministry for northern Kenya for the first time. We did a lot of research work on how you can deal with ASAL, arid and semi-arid regions of our country. So we have been there before. We are not newcomers in the government. We know the challenges. We know the problems we are going to. I know you're going to want to ask me about the debt issue. we know that there's really nothing wrong in a country in carrying debts. Most countries have got debts. Even the United States has got public debts. Japan has got a lot of public debts. Germany has got a lot of public debts. In fact, the total debt that the African countries have are less than the debt between just two countries in Europe, Belgium and the Netherlands. Okay? But then the thing is, what you do with that when you borrow to invest. Because if you borrow for consumption, then your ability to repay becomes impaired. But if you borrow to invest in productivity, then that enhances your ability to repay the debts. We know that the debt has increased. You just need to now look at what that debt has financed. What project did it finance? And we know that most of it did not actually go to do real development. The dams of just Aror and Kimarer can tell you that. And there are quite a number of those other white elephant projects which were there, particularly in Uhuru's first term. That is where most of this debt was incurred. There's some of it which has been incurred in the second. The people who are actually crying about the debts are the people who are responsible for those debts. I give you the example of SGR. SGR was a grand coalition government project. We conceived it, Kibaki, as a project. It was done under the NESC, National Economic and Social Council, which were being co-chaired by Kibaki and myself. It was supposed to be Mombasa, Nairobi, Kampala. So we had a joint committee co-chaired by me, the Prime Minister of Kenya, and the Prime Minister of Uganda. But because of bureaucracies in Uganda, when we had met here, the minutes prepared had to wait to be tabled in their cabinet before approved, and then the next meeting to now go and meet in Kampala, and so on. I went and told Kibaki, at this rate, our time is going to expire before we finish, we do anything. Let us take Mombasa, Nairobi as a purely Kenyan government project. That is how we did it. We did that. And then we now appointed the consultants, and they did the feasibility study, the engineering design, tender documents, and we awarded the contract at $2.7 billion. When they came to government, they cancelled that contract and re-advertised, and then awarded it a few months later to the same contractor at 3.6 billion from 2.7. Then it went to 4.3, then 4.6, then I don't know 5 point what. So you asked me about the debts. This is how the debt is accumulated, okay? And that was the first term that those Tanga people are saying nothing happened. Most of these debts were incurred at that time. Now, what we are going to do, because we have dealt with these issues before, we will look at particularly, there are some commercial debts. What is really killing are the commercial debts with short-term period of repayment, high interest rates. Those are the ones that you really need to renegotiate and get maybe a refunding or so that you can extend it to a long-term debt with lower repayment rates and also reduce the rate of interest. There are several ways of dealing with this issue, so that you don't want to get in the government and just work to pay the debts and do nothing. Okay? We have analyzed the debt that we owe as a country. We know that it can be managed. We know what we intend to do with it, so that we don't just go to government and nothing is happening. We will find a way of dealing with it.
If elected president in August and deputy president in August, you will be the second implementers of the presidential system of administration, presidential system of government. Maybe in a minute or two, each one for you, Mheshimiwa Raila and Mheshimiwa Martha, what is that one thing that you will avoid from the Uhuru Ruto administration?
The unseemly disagreement, taking it to the public. People may differ on how to go about things. That's supposed to be settled in the boardroom. We will try to conduct ourselves in a way that maintains the respect of the office and demonstrates respect to the people of Kenya.
We have the new constitution brought a presidential system, but it also brought a devolved system of government. Devolution actually ought to make service delivery more efficient. But you need to look at it that you don't have 48 governments, 47 counties, and one national government. There's one country. So it is one government. And therefore, you need to work together closely with the devolved units and agree on priorities. And also you must have a benchmark through which performance of the counties can be measured. You see, so that you have equal system of service. You know, you have a situation where other countries do so well in health systems, others do better in education facilities, others in water, and other. We must have one country. We must have a way of measuring performance of county government, and that is the responsibility of the national government. So we do that, we will be able to make this country work for the good of the people of the country.
How can the people of Kenya hold you to account for all the promises that you're making?
You see, the taste of the pudding is in the eating it. The Kenyans know me because it's not my first time to go to government. I mean, I'm not going there as a newcomer. They know what I can do because I have delivered when I was in government. As a Minister for Energy, I'm the one who made rural electrification an infrastructure development rather than a commercial enterprise, and made it possible to roll it out countrywide, okay, in the short period. And I'm the one also who came up with the reforms to remove transmission and distribution from generation, and allow the private sector to come in at the IPPs. At that time, it was supposed. Then, in the road sector, I'm the one who introduced these road agencies, the Kenha, Kura, Kera, at that time, which was opposed very vehemently, to make the service delivery much more efficient at that time. But I think that with the devolved system, there's really no need now for Kera and Kura, because those should be responsibilities of the county governments. You see, why should we have roads in Mombasa which are not the responsibility of the county government of Mombasa, that are being run from Nairobi, or in Kisumu, or in Nakuru, and so on, or even rural roads in the counties? Those should be responsibility of the county government. If you do that and release resources to go down there, 35% of resources is very easily done. Even the health sector system, release the money to go down, because health is a devolved system. Agriculture, the same. So you're having a problem here about, you're sticking to about 15%. To actually release 35% is so easy. Just release the responsibilities with the resources, and now and supervise the county government from Nairobi. Then services will be delivered properly.
Asante sana. Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga and Martha Karua, asanteni sana for taking this conversation with us this evening. This has been a joint conversation between several media houses, KTN, Citizen, K24, KBC, and NTV, and several radio stations this evening. We want to thank my colleagues here who've been with us this evening. Alan Owino from K24, Nancy Okware from KBC, my colleague Melita Tenges from NTV, my colleague Francis Gashuri from Citizen, and my name is Eric Lati from KTN. We thank you very much for watching this broadcast, and of course, if you've got any questions, just follow us on all our social media houses from the various stations, and then we'll also be forwarding them to Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga and his running mate, Martha Karua.
The upcoming debate? Presidential debate?
Yeah.
As you know very well, the Media Council of Kenya, the Media Owners Association, and the Kenya Editors Guild have been working on a presidential debate, and the dates are soon going to be released. The debates will be taking place in July. The question is, the one for the Deputy President, will you attend?
Would love it.
You will be ready.
I've said I would love it.
Honorable Raila.
I had agreed but as you know that other people refused, rejected, objected. I have participated before, as you know. The other time I debated alone. So it will depend on the availability and preparations. Okay?
But a commitment from you is you're ready and willing to attend the debates.
Always ready.
Keep it here for that. We'll tell you the dates for those debates. And of course, you've heard the Azimio candidate and running mate are ready for the debates. Asante sana. Good evening.
Good evening.
Dear Baba, when I grow up, I want to be an engineer just like you.
And I would like to be a lawyer just like mother. But can we have water at home to drink, cook and clean so I can have more time to study?
How can we offer a better healthcare system?
Na kuniwezesha mimi kama mlemavu.
Mimi kama jua kali, wata recognize skill yangu aje?
Mimi mfanyi biashara, naweza pata financial support, niongeze stock.
In whose hands are our businesses safe?
Dear Baba.
Yo, Baba, Wakenya wameongeza barua zingine. Wanasema wanataka password.
Barua tumezisoma.
Wakenya, tumesikia maoni yenu. Hii ndio password.
Inawezekana.